Me and my wife made $289,000 last year, and we still can't afford a home in the Bay Area. Now, I'm making this video to shed some light into our lives. This is not a woe is me video. Don't need people feeling bad. We chose to live here. We choose to live here. And I think we're blessed with really good jobs. We're very fortunate because we haven't been laid off. We work for a great company that offers really good benefits. I want to continue working for this company, but I want to shed some light into the reality of living in the Bay Area, right? Maybe you're preparing a move to come out here. Maybe you're currently living here and you can relate to this kind of like sentiment, right? But I want to share kind of like the present reality that we face. And, I'll say we are pretty disciplined when it comes to our finances, heavy investors. We don't really spend a lot of money on dumb stuff, right? We all obviously could clean up some stuff. We're not perfect when it comes to money, but even being a very disciplined household with the money that we bring in, we still face certain barriers to accessing some of the things that people would determine in America leads to a higher quality of life, and that's what I'm going to spend some time talking about today to shed a little bit of insight into the expensive cost of living in the Bay Area. So the first thing that I think is that I kind of want to like set is how I kind of like found out how much we made and kind of like the cost associated with where we live. So um, you know we just got married in May of last year. This was the first time we filed taxes like jointly this year. Tallying up the amount of money that we made $289,000 this past year. Both of us work for a major tech company out here in the Bay. We work at the same company. We hold the same position. We actually make the same amount of money. It's just you take what I make and you just add her to the equation, and it's just double. So we make the same amount of money. We bring in over $200,000. We're in a good spot when it comes to kind of like our career now. When it comes to like investing and finances, we're very disciplined with our finances. We invest a lot of money. I currently am maxing out my 401k, maxing out our HSA. We put a lot of money into our taxable brokerages account. We're setting up investments for our newborn son to kind of build generational wealth for him. We got a lot of unvested and vested RSUs from our company and the company stock. It's a really great company, really good stock to own. So we're really disciplined when it comes to our finances, right? We don't spend a lot of money on stupid stuff. We're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I think we're doing pretty well. Obviously, there's some things that we can clean up, and we're going to continue to try to clean up and kind of be able to maximize the amount of money that we bring in. But for starters, we're doing pretty well. Now, when it comes to the cost of living like, in the Bay Area, the city that we live in is Belmont, and it's in California. It's a pretty expensive city to live, right? The median home cost is around $2 million. I kind of did a little bit of rough, research, and the average household income, based in the area that we live, is around over $200,000. So I think the average cost household income is about like $250,000 in the area. Median's like 210. These are just kind of like estimates, but I would say, yeah, most people that we know are probably bringing in around $200,000 in the city that we live. So the city that we live in is very expensive. Some of the benefits, very green, very nice, very safe area to live in. You don't have a lot of crime at all. You can walk out late at night and not have to worry about any kind of like crime, any kind of violence. In the Bay Area, in different pockets of the Bay Area, there's a high crime rate when it comes to, people breaking into like cars. From our experience, we haven't experienced that. So the city that we live in is really great, really safe. We feel very comfortable kind of, raising our newborn son in this kind of like area. With that, though, it is expensive to get a home. Based off the salary that we bring in, home ownership is out of the equation, right? It's sad because we watched like a video. I think the news, the Bay Area news, kind of like broke this down. In the city that we live in, or in the area that we live in, we would need to be bringing in over $500,000 to be able to afford a home in this like city. So that's literally double the amount of money that we bring in per year. And it's just crazy to think about. We'd have to double the amount of money we make, which is already considered high income, um, higher income like in the United States overall. But we'd have to bring in double the amount of money just to be able to afford a home. So if home ownership is something that you value and believe leads to a higher quality of life as an American, like it is a struggle to do that in the city that we live in, even with us having respectable careers, bringing in a good amount of money, and even with us being disciplined with our money, we just can't afford a home. So, when we think about long term, if we're trying to get a home, we got to move out of the Bay Area. Like it's just not going to be a thing in the short term. We can continue to rent. We can continue to try to find more affordable places to kind of like live. But when you think about, using our money to maximize the quality of life when it comes to where we live, we're just not able to do that in the Bay Area. So home ownership is out of the equation, even though we bring in over $200,000 per year. Now, where we're currently staying, I would even argue, and most people would argue, does not is not really. It doesn't feel like the best use of money, right? So, we bring in, I'll say roughly about, you know, after all of our investments and everything, about $10,000 per month, right? $10,000 per month. The place that we live is less than 30% of our take home pay, which is $10,000 per month. Last year, we stayed in a studio apartment and paid $2,500 per month, not including utilities, to live in like this city, right? And it was for 500 square feet. So this is by no means, we're not living like anywhere like super nice, right? Like from a dollar value standpoint, when we tell some of our friends that live in other states, so like that's crazy that you're paying that much for such little real estate, right? Like such little space to live in. Recently, because we've had our newborn, we just moved within this past month to a one bedroom apartment, which is 100 square feet more. So it's 600 square feet total. And we're paying $2,700, not including utilities, right? So it's crazy the prices that you have to pay. And this is less than 30% of our take home pay per month, which is, you know, the responsible way to kind of like rent and kind of like live. It gives us a lot of access to be able to invest money and put money in other places, but like again, from a quality of life standpoint, we just don't have a lot of space. So everything feels kind of like cramped. And that's really kind of how the Bay Area feels. Everything kind of feels cramped. And that's the thing when you live in like major cities, like it's gonna feel, a little bit kind of like squish. But yeah, I don't know. Like from a long-term standpoint, it's not ideal. And that's what we've kind of like talked about, where if we wanted to get into buying our first home and then um, potentially moving from that first home and renting it out and getting into just real estate and things like that, we just can't do it in the Bay Area, and that's the reality that we have to accept. But again, like we're not feeling bad about ourselves. This is not like a woe is me. That's just the reality of living like in the Bay Area. So if you are going to live like in the Bay Area, and even if you think you're going to get like a decent salary considering like jobs or people that don't currently live here, you just know that's part of the game, right? Like living in the Bay Area right now, and I think how it's been for previous decades. It's not. This is a place to kind of hustle, to kind of generate high income, to kind of accelerate and grow like your career. But it might not be the place to kind of live the slow life, to settle down, to get a home, right? Like these $2 million homes that you're seeing, if you looked at, do not look like $2 million homes, right? I don't even understand how the prices are so high. I mean, me and my wife, we like to look at homes that we could get if we were to go live in Dallas, Texas, or places in Texas or Arizona or other states where cost of living is a lot lower. And if you were to spend the money that you're paying for houses out here, you'd get like compounds out there. Out here, these are by no means great like properties at all. Like I wouldn't want to touch it. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Like I'm not looking to invest in these properties. I wouldn't want to live in these properties because just the real estate and the homes out here is just not worth the money, right? So that's the kind of thing. That's the first thing I think, just home ownership, where you rent, things like that. It's going to be super expensive. And even for us, I mean, bringing in high incomes, it's too expensive, right? To like kind of like live long term. So that's kind of like, I think the main thing that, we're facing from a cost standpoint. So what we're planning to do about it right now is, I think in the short term, we want to continue living out here. It doesn't make sense for us to quit our jobs right now with everything that's going on with AI, with all of the layoffs. Like we need to keep hustling. We need to keep, investing, saving aggressively, taking advantage of the fact that we still have jobs and we're still able to bring in like income so that, we can kind of build up our investment portfolios, and then potentially long term, like look to figure out where is going to be the place that we want to move to if we want to buy our first home, right? If we want to bring more kids into like our expanding family, if we want to kind of have a little bit of a better quality of life, from that standpoint, it's just not going to be in like the Bay Area. But I think right now, the focus is how do we take advantage of the opportunity we have. It's cool to move to the Bay Area because of the job opportunity, right? Like there's so many jobs, even though there's a lot of layoffs, there's always so many new jobs. There's a lot of startup companies, big tech companies are continuously like hiring. It's a very robust like kind of like job market like out here, even with everything that's going on with AI and like layoffs. And so I feel like living out here, you can always like find work. Even if we were to get laid off, we would be able to rebound a little bit quicker than if we were to live in maybe a lower cost of living area, um, like across the country with a less robust kind of like job market. Given that we're pretty like young and still like newer like in our careers, right? And so that's kind of like what we've thought about. And so right now, everything's about the setup for the next phase of our life. I think within the next 5 years, right? Like 5, maybe 7 years, that transition into maybe somewhere else, especially as our first son gets older, to moving somewhere else, maybe in the country that's a little bit like cheaper, is definitely in the cards. But right now, it's about hustling. It's about being very wise and smart with our money, and trying to maximize, the best quality of life we possibly can while living like in the Bay Area, right? And you kind of have to sacrifice in the now, the idea of, home ownership. You can't have it all living here, right? And I think, the blueprint for success while living in major cities, especially like if you're just early in your career, is to get to a major city. You're probably going to do the roommate situation, but you can keep your costs down. You can generate like higher kind of income salaries. Like than you could like in other places like in the country. But you have to kind of sacrifice this idea that you're gonna have home ownership or maybe some of these other kind of like things that go into what people determine as like a higher quality of life. I think the last thing that I'll touch on, like, briefly too, even with the amount of money about the amount of money that we bring in, is we pay a hell of a lot of money, like in taxes, right? California paying state income tax. I'm from Washington. Taxes out there are starting to get crazy as well, but there was no state income tax. Like when I from Washington, the place that I was like born and raised. Um, but it's crazy. Like we don't take home $200,000. So on paper, it sounds like a lot of like money that you're bringing in. But if you're living in California, everybody knows like most of your money is going to the state, most of your money is going to for federal taxes. We do a lot of like smart things to try to reduce the amount of money that we bring in. Whether it's maxing out our 401k so we can have that kind of tax deferral setup. I'm doing the HSA. We're finding different ways that we can kind of reduce our taxable like income. Even with that, we still do not bring in um, a lot of money take home because we're paying so much in like taxes. So on paper, the number sounds cool. A lot of people love to flex that. Anybody that lives in these major cities, they'll know the reality is you're not taking in that much money. So we actually need to make even more money to be able to take in $200,000. But the more money you make out here, the more money they take. So that's the caveat of like living out here. So um, yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of like my thoughts on how much money we bring in. A little bit of like reality of like the cost that goes into living out here in the Bay Area. It is quite expensive. The city that we live in is quite expensive. We've chosen this right now temporarily for where we're at in life. We're not going to complain about it. We're just moving strategically, right? We're understanding the season that we're at in our life. And I think it would be very unwise for us if we understood all of this and we're just spending money frivolously and trying to pretend as if we're living this high, like, quality life. When in reality, we're not. Right now, we just got to we got to continue to be disciplined with our finances to set us up for the higher quality of life that we're looking for in the next couple years, when we plan to make a different move, right? So that we can, buy our first home, maybe get into like real estate, and open that up from an investment standpoint. But everything we do now is about keeping our costs down and maximizing the opportunity that we have with the jobs that we bring in. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I thought it was pretty cool and interesting to like look at because I didn't know that we brought in that much money. But when we filed our taxes, like, oh wow, that's actually on paper a decent amount of money. We definitely talked about it. We don't feel like we brought in that amount of money because of the taxes, because of the high cost of living area that we live in, and because of the lack of opportunity to be able to buy a home in the city that we live in. So that's the reality of living in the Bay Area. Let me know if you're going through the same experience if you live in the Bay Area. I think a lot of people that live in the Bay Area know this, or if you live in another major city across the country, New York, LA, thinking like Miami, like these expensive kind of like cities. You're probably feeling that. Or if you're thinking about moving to like one of these cities, I hope this video helps and sheds a little bit of light into the reality of what you might be getting yourself into. It can kind of help give you some things to kind of like think about and align a more strategic purpose for coming out here. Because if you come out here, just understand that you're probably not going to be able to buy a home. And if buying a home is something that you're thinking about long term, use the opportunity to come out here to grow your career, earn a higher income so that you can maybe coast fire, put some more money away for like retirement. But then long term, you're probably going to have to leave if home ownership and building that kind of slow life is like what your end goal is. Because it's definitely not possible with how expensive it is to live in the Bay Area. Hope this video helps.